What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Flex Podcast. I am your host, Chris Raybon, joined as always by one of the top fantasy football rankers in the game, Sean Kerner. And today we're going to be talking all about running backs. We're going to go through the top 12 running backs by ADP. What up, Sean?
What's up, man? I am hyped. First week of real preseason this week. Next week, we're actually going to the Rams-Texans game. So the next couple weeks are going to be very exciting. And running back, this is one of my favorite positions to talk about every year. So super hyped about today's pod.
And before we get into it, we have a contest winner. You get a free Year of Action Pro Irvin 875. So congratulations. And thank you for the kind words in a review. You can hit up podcasts at actionnetwork.com to claim your free Year of Action Pro, which of course comes with our rankings and projections. If you like the show, be sure to leave us a 5-star. We'll pick the best one each week to give you a free Year of Action Pro. So stay tuned for that. Let's jump right into these running backs. And I guess it's worth revisiting, Sean, before we jump in. What's your approach at running back heading into this year? Are you going kind of for the hero running back? Are you going for the zero running back? Like any of those strategies? Are you just kind of taking what the draft gives you? How are you going about it?
Yeah, I don't adhere to any one specific buzzword strategy. I let the draft come to me. It really does depend on your draft slot when it comes to the running back position. How I approach it, I do let it come to me. And, the first couple rounds, you definitely want to get a workhorse back. So I'm not opposed to taking them. But the running back, those kind of running backs are very fragile, where if they get hurt, it really screws you over. And that's why running back has so much volatility. It's the position that takes the most hits every game. So it's the most likely to get hurt. So that's why I do thrive on taking these mid-round to late-round running backs. I have my running back upside chart out this week where you can get running backs that are anti-fragile, that benefit on the chaos, and their value can really only go up if the starter misses time. So I'm confident in my ability to kind of get late round value, stash kind of like injury upside backs. So that's why I don't just go all in on running back early on. I do prefer, to get like a elite wide receiver in round one if I can help it, because that position, it's way tougher to get guys like that later on that can produce like a wide receiver 2 or even wide receiver 1. It's even tougher to find guys on the waiver wire in season. You just don't have that baked in upside. If a teammate were to go down, you take the backup. You don't have that luxury at wide receiver. So I do like to attack wide receiver early on. But again, I'm not opposed to take a workhorse back early in the draft.
Yeah, you and I recently spoke with Jeff Ratcliffe. That podcast is out now. And we kind of talked about how, there is a drop-off at wide receiver, I think, after those first 9-10 guys.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think it's important to get a wide receiver 1 here. So, but let's talk about these running backs and, which ones we, would still take early on, which ones maybe we'd rather kind of forego for a wide receiver. We're starting with Jonathan Taylor. He's at the top of pretty much every draft board. I guess, the question when you have a guy coming off a season like this, how much regression is coming? And are you concerned at all about the 372 touches we have seen in the past? Running backs put up these massive touch counts, and it's tough to kind of do it back to back.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for him to match last year's numbers, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't take him the first running back off the board or even the first overall. So we should see some regression. I think one of the sneaky areas where we could see some regression with him is the Colts led the league in time and possession with the lead last year. So unless you think they're going to be, runaway Super Bowl favorites, I don't know why they would lead the league in time possession of the lead again this year. So they could have slightly more trailing game scripts, be a little bit more pass heavy, which would hurt Jonathan Taylor because he doesn't really provide much receiving upside. So if they are trailing a bit more, we would see more Nyheim Hines, less carries overall. So I think that's where there might be some sneaky regression, or in just injury luck in general. I guess apparently he's never missed a practice, a game, or anything in high school, college, or the NFL, which is remarkable to think about. And it says about him, maybe he's just really durable, running back. But either way, you can't escape injury in the NFL. So He's not going to be injury proof his entire career. So that's another area we might see some regression, but either way, he's still the number one back overall. Still think he's going to just, outperform everybody when he's healthy. So he still warrants the first overall pick.
Yeah, I do think, you'll see some more Nyheim Hines in passing situations, but I mean, the Colts, they still play in that division with Jacksonville, Houston, Tennessee. So that's kind of why they always have all these leads.
Definitely have an easy schedule. Yep.
So yeah, I have no real hold to poke in Taylor. The only thing is you just hope he can continue to kind of withstand the beating, but he has so far. I think the offensive line's still pretty solid. And I think they actually got an upgraded quarterback as well. So that might help. Austin Eckler is now the number 2 running back in ADP. That's kind of interesting. I love Eckler. I mean, every year I feel like he gets underdrafted until now. I mean, he averaged 17.3 touches per game last year. Is that enough for his running back 2 ADP?
Yeah, so he only averaged 12.9 rush attempts per game last season, which isn't great if you're taking a guy in the top 3, but when it comes to high value touches or just usage, he was elite. He had 14 rush attempts inside the 5-yard line, which ranked 4th last year. So that was kind of a surprise to me. So he is their goal line back. He's going to have, touchdown upside again this year. He led the league in routes run inside the 10-yard line. So he has touchdown usage in the passing game as well. And he ranked 2nd in targets for running backs with 93. So, when it comes to receptions and usage around the goal line, he's elite in every level. So if he's not getting, a carry on their own 30-yard line for 4 yards, does that really kill you? Probably not. So I think that running back 2 is probably steep. I think I would rather take CMC there, but certainly Eckler should be a top 3 just based on the touches he is getting. So I wouldn't let his, they like to limit his rushing usage a bit. I wouldn't let that scare you away from him. He's still getting high value touches in one of the most dynamic and high scoring offenses in the league. So that's kind of why you're taking Eckler.
Yeah, I remember, last couple of years, I was saying Eckler is kind of like a baby Christian McCaffrey. Like you could have got him later, and look what he did last year. He gave you Christian McCaffrey numbers essentially, a little bit different way, but all in all, I mean, he was right there in that top 3. Now I can get McCaffrey after Eckler. So now I feel like, now I'm off of him. Not like off of him as in like, oh, I'm down on him. But I mean, RB2, like you said, I still think Christian McCaffrey deserves to be above him. I mean, you could make a case for, Derrick Henry. I think Naji Harris is even, kind of in that conversation as well, just because of the snaps, because this Chargers offense is going to be good, but they got a lot of different, guys that can score the ball. They've been wanting to get another running back involved, to take some of the pressure off of him. He had a career high 206 carries last year and the 12 touchdowns. I mean, he had 1 touchdown the year before rushing. So I just see a little bit too wide of a range of outcomes for pick number 2. I think that, last year was the year to draft Eckler. You could get him like, 11th, 12th, and look what he did. He finished.
Are you worried about Isaiah Spiller at all?
No, worried is the wrong word. I just think that there's kind of like with Deebo Samuel, when you have a player getting this usage, and it's it could be in the passing game, it could be in the run game. He had 12 rushing touchdowns last year after having 1 year before. That just shows you the kind of range of outcomes that we're dealing with this player. And so at number 2, I just rather take somebody with a little bit less of a wide range of outcomes. And I think you could make a case for McCaffrey, Henry, Harris, Cook. I mean, I just feel better about those guys at number 2, or just, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, exactly.
And McCaffrey is number 3. And I mean, I guess it's, we talk about this all the time, and it's like projecting missed games is pretty much like a loss. It's foolish. Like it's every running back has a chance to get hurt. You can't really overrate a running back's chances of missing games, or you can't underrate it either. But I feel like people are kind of sleeping on McCaffrey a little bit, bumping him behind Eckler. So, I mean, how much are you kind of factoring in his recent injuries?
None really. I think that's why you get him at a discount. And I understand the concern. He's only played 10 of the past 33 games. How can you trust him? But I think you made a good point. Like when it comes to, injury concerns or anything, I only take that into account when the guy's actually hurt. We just have to assume if a guy is 100% healthy, there's no reason to think, he's an injury risk. We did that last year with Saquon Barkley, who was actually limping into the season. That's why we were fading him. He was already hurt. But with Christian McCaffrey being 100% healthy right now, there's no reason to think that he'll play less games than other running backs. So I'm really not docking him at all when it comes to missed games. Plus, he's a good pass catching back. The Panthers are probably going to be pretty bad this year. So they're going to have plenty of negative game scripts. That helps McCaffrey. I do think they might use Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard possibly to kind of limit the less important carries. Like I was talking about Austin Eckler, they might limit his usage on their own 30 or something like that with those guys. But I don't really think they're going to eat into the high value touches that we've seen from him. So when he's been healthy, he's still been a top back. So that's why I'm not shying away at all. If anything, we just get him at a discount this year.
Yeah, and he should be fresh. I mean, he's 26, so he's got maybe a couple years left in his prime, but he had those 403 touches in 2019, and then he's only had about 200 the last 2 years. So he should be fresh. 1 for 1. Eckler versus McCaffrey. Give me McCaffrey this year. And now and then Derrick Henry. Speaking of injuries, I mean, he was indestructible. I mean, we were projecting him for 16 games played, which is unheard of for a running back.
Yeah.
And of course he, messes up his foot, misses 8 games. But I feel like people might still be underestimating him. Again, it's kind of like McCaffrey. Like this man, Derrick Henry, averaged 27.4 carries per game. That's if he no one's coming close to that. Even Jonathan Taylor, I feel like is not going to sniff that. So I mean, can he do it for a full season? We've seen him do it before. I have no real issue with Henry. I know he's not going to get a lot of pass game usage, but I mean, the Titans are really going to have to lean on him this year. They traded AJ Brown. They got some, working in essentially a whole new receiving core. What do you think they're going to do? They're just going to hand it to Henry over and over.
Yeah, absolutely. He's still the Derrick Henry we know and love. And I've kind of made it a point to be higher on Derrick Henry than ADP ever since the DeMarco Murray days. But this year I'm right in line. And one of the things with Derrick Henry, we always knew he had a high floor. He was a safe high floor play. There is some concern now. I mean, he's 28 years old now. So in this day and age, that's really tough to expect a guy to continue having this massive workload and be efficient. I think, he's still going to see a massive workload. Without AJ Brown there, they're going to have to run the ball just as much, if not more than before. I do worry that, not having AJ Brown there is going to take away from some of the suspense that they might throw it deep or something. So teams can probably key in on Derrick Henry and slow him down. And last year we did finally start to see him decline a bit. And the yards per carry was 4.3. He only averaged 0.05, expected yards over carry according to Next Gen Stats. So we've seen a little bit of a decline, but either way, it's going to be offset with just a massive volume. So I do still like him at RB5, but just compared to the last few seasons, he does have more concerns than we're used to. And I guess I jinxed it last year by saying he's indestructible. And, he's the only player I was projecting for more than 60 game play. So that was probably my fault for finally jinxing him, but he's still going to be very durable. And last year's injury is kind of a fluke. So I'm still okay taking him RB5.
Fun fact about Derrick Henry.
Oh yeah. Let me hear it.
If he averages less than 27.4 carries per game this year, it'll be the first time in his career he's ever gone down in carries per game compared to the previous years. 7.3, 11, 13.4, 20.2, 23.6, 27.4. And I feel like the Titans, they have to hand it to him even more. I mean, defenses have always been keying in on him. But yeah, you're right. The age 27 is kind of that peak age. Now he'll be 28 this year. But again, could be a little fresher. Only played those 9 games last year, 8 plus the one in the playoffs. So
not that it matters with him, but he was on pace to double his career high in receptions last year. So that's been the only flaw in his game is his lack of receiving usage. But last year he did, he saw a spike in passing work and receptions and things like that. So that'd be interesting if they do phase him more in the receiving game. That would help his fantasy value even more. So that was just interesting to see that last year he was on pace to shatter careers high in reception yards. And he didn't score a touchdown, but he never does. But either way, if his receiving usage spikes up, like we haven't seen his ceiling yet.
Yeah, and that's scary. So yeah,
that would be scary.
No issues with Derrick Henry. I feel like Naji Harris could be the new Derrick Henry, though. I mean, all we need is the efficiency, because the usage. I mean, if there's a guy to challenge, I mean, it's probably between Taylor, Henry, and I would say Naji Harris for that league lead in carries. Running backs, we talk about this a lot when you're modeling running backs. There's not going to be a lot of variance from, it's going to be around 4 yards per carry for most guys. Do you think his efficiency can improve? He only averaged 3.9 yards per carry last year, and only 6.3 per reception. But I mean, the usage was there.
Yeah, I would expect the efficiency to only improve, because it was pretty bad last year. It's not his fault. He suffered from poor offensive line play. And unfortunately, this offensive line will still be one of the worst in the league. So we can't really project him for Derrick Henry level efficiency, but certainly volume. I think you made a good point. Like, I think he's the new Derrick Henry. And he's Derrick Henry with pass catching upside. We can project him most weeks to get 3 or 4 receptions. So he just has massive volume upside, and the efficiency, if it were to go up, that'd be a bonus. But either way, you're taking him based on expected volume. So I like him at RB5 right behind Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I think, the pass game snaps are always nice. I think they could actually go down a little bit. I mean, Big Ben was just check down, like a check down machine, last year. So I think, they drafted a couple of wide receivers. They got Freiermuth at tight end. Maybe they try to, give him a little breather with the pass down snaps here and there. But either way, I mean, I still think he can be kind of like a Derrick Henry volume in that neighborhood, and he'll still catch, more balls, way more balls than Derrick Henry.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I'm still comfortable with taking Naji Harris over pretty much any wide receiver, but Kupp and Jefferson. If I'm kind of in that middle. Maybe Jamar Chase, I don't mind it, but Kupp and Jefferson are probably the only two guys I'd feel good about taking over Naji in this tier right here.
Yeah, and how about the Steelers talking about they were going to lighten his volume a bit? Have you looked into that a little bit more? Are they talking about actual touches or playing time, where they take him off the field in situations where he's not even getting the ball?
So they specifically said kind of like they want to take him off the field for snaps when he wouldn't get touches.
Yeah,
so
okay.
Pass blocking work, but
even better.
If you're off the field, like he's gonna run I would bet he doesn't run. What did he run, like a route on 66% of the dropbacks? I'm projecting that more in at round 55, 60. I would bet he takes a little bit of a dip, but I still think the carries will be there for him.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of how I was projecting. I just want to follow up because I haven't heard any details on that, but that's what I assumed, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same deal as McCaffrey, as Henry. It's like the Steelers need to make this dude their centerpiece. Like you got Trubisky, you got Rudolph, you got Pickett, a couple of rookie wide receivers. Yep. I mean, just a young squad all around, and a bad offensive line. So like Naji Harris is going to get fed. I think the floor is very high, and the ceiling is just high because of the volume. Like, maybe he gets lucky and gets a couple, like bust a 90-yard run or two, and then, have a whole different conversation. Dalvin Cook. Now, this is why I like this top tier of running backs, again, outside of Kupp and Jefferson. I still feel good about him because, I mean, Dalvin Cook slipping all the way to RB6. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, do you think he's peaked at all, or is he due for some positive touchdown regression? He only had 6 on 283 touches last year.
Yeah, he might have peaked. He's he's going to be 27 this year, so he's probably on the tail end of his prime, obviously. But when you watched him last year, there was times he still looked like one of the top backs in the league, and he still is. So I still like him this year. Like you said, I think RB6 is a steal for him. And yeah, I think we'll see some positive touchdown regression. He saw 15 rush attempts inside the 5 last year and only scored on 3 of those. Typically, you'd expect a running back to score about 6.5 touchdowns. So about 3.5 touchdowns below expectation. You would expect an above average running back like Dalvin Cook to actually be better than average. So yeah, we can absolutely expect some positive touchdown regression. This offense might be better this year.
Mm-hmm.
They've been using him more as like, if they line him up as a wide receiver. So if they're getting him more involved in the passing game, that was kind of my only concern with him last year, was his receiving usage seemed like it dipped a little bit. But if they're going to get him more involved in the passing game, then yeah, he's going to be a steal at RB6. He is one of those guys where you kind of expect him to miss a few games every year. I don't think he's played more than 14 games in a season, but when he is on the field, he's certainly going to be, every week sort of top 5 back. So I think you're getting quite a bit of value on him at RB6 this year.
Yeah, I really like this, the prospects for this offense with Kevin O'Connell. Like, I don't think it can be understated, just how much Mike Zimmer is kind of like Pete Carroll in a way. It's like a coach who just has a certain mentality about how to play the game that's not really conducive to, fully opening up the offense. So I think Dalvin Cook could really benefit. Now, I mean, the defense is probably more worried about Justin Jefferson than Dalvin Cook at this point. And, Kirk Cousins has been playing well. And remember, O'Connell's the dude who gave Cam Akers, he banged him into the wall 27 times.
Yeah.
Like one game back from an Achilles injury.
Yeah.
Like 48 yards, 24 carries in the playoffs against Tampa Bay of all teams too.
Right.
So like, if he's doing that with Cam Akers, I feel like he has a lot in store for Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, and I think the upside for the running back in this offense, if you go back when Todd Gurley was really, really good, that would sort of be his upside, really good pass catching back and, goal line opportunities. So I would just look at Todd Gurley's 2017, 2018, that range to see Dalvin Cook's upside in this scheme.
Yeah, and this is, those 6 running backs, Taylor, Eckler, CMC, Henry, Harris, Cook, like, I think all have a great shot at being the top player in fantasy this year, and obviously the top running back. So those are the guys that, if it's not a Cup, if it's not a Justin Jefferson, probably going to have one of those 6 guys if I'm taking in the top 8, if I'm drafting in the top 8. It starts to get a little bit dicier with Joe Mixon, because we know he's just not gonna, be a full on passing, 3 down back. Like they tried to use him last year on more passing downs, and it just didn't really work out. And I mean, we could joke around about, and it hurt, in the Super Bowl watching P. Ryan getting those touches.
You have to bring this up every episode. It's now a rule.
It's like the Gio Bernard. P. Ryan is our new Gio Bernard.
Absolutely.
But I still think that is going to be a little bit of a limiting factor. So he's just a very high end 2 down back, but that's where it starts, feeling dicey, as in, like, I don't know if I feel like Joe Mixon has the same like RB1 overall potential that I feel for those guys in the top 6. And, I do feel that way about Jamar Chase, Javonte Adams, Travis Kelce, guys like that. So probably where I'm starting to pivot away from running back if I'm staring at Mixon. But what have you done when you're up and Mixon's the top player on the board?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a teardrop at this point. I still like Mixon. If you can get him at the end of round 1, if he falls that far, go for it, because he's still a high floor play. Mm-hmm. Everything you said is correct, where he's limited as a receiver, but that's fine. And this season, I think the improved offensive line is going to help Mixon out considerably. This Bengals team's really good now, so we can expect more positive game scripts, which would help Mixon. He's going to thrive in those kind of game scripts to begin with. And he still has massive touchdown upside in this offense. So I think just based on Mixon's game, the team is shaping up really well for him this year. And again, this offensive line is going to be so much better this year. So his efficiency could go up. His usage could go up, at least in rush attempts. So despite the concerns on the receiving end, I still like his floor.
Yeah, and his carries per game have been so consistent, between pretty much 16 and 19, even going back to the last year with Marvin Lewis,
Yeah.
Then 2 and 14 with Zach Taylor, or Super Bowl with Zach Taylor. The usage has always been pretty consistent. So he is a very, very high floor play. The range of outcomes are small. So I never hate on that, but just as a first round pick, it's not as exciting as those top six. I think there's definitely a teardrop and definitely a spot where you want to start thinking about wide receivers, depending on who's on the board. Running back 8. Here we go.
Here we go.
Nick Chubb.
It's time.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like RB8. I hate getting on Nick Chubb, but I feel like RB8's a little high for Nick Chubb this year. I mean,
yeah, no,
right? Okay? I'm not crazy.
No,
right?
I'm not going to get okay. First of all, before we dive in, what do you have his yards per carry at right now? Go.
I think it's like high 4 still. I think I'm still under 5. Let me double check.
Man.
Let's see. Yeah, I think it's like 4.9.
Gotta bump it up to at least 5. Give me 5.
Hey, you could have said that about Henry last year, and look what happened. And
I did say that about Henry. Yeah,
no, I'm saying you could have.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, he's another guy that's turning 27. He's still got your boy Kareem Hunt there, and like they kind of lucked out that they were both hurt at different various points last year. So again, high floor guy, but can he finish as the RB1 overall? I don't see it.
Yeah, no, I think RB8 is way too expensive for him. That would be if Kareem Hunt is traded away. Mm-hmm. I would say Nick Chubb's ceiling is around RB7. When Kareem Hunt is out of the lineup, I would project Chubb as the RB7. So RB8, like you're already closer to his ceiling. So given Kareem Hunt is still there, yeah, like RB13 would sound about right. And I have his yards per carry at 5.1 this year, so I'm much closer to you. The offensive line should still be legit, but they did lose J.C. Treader, so that could hurt the O-line a bit. Nick Chubb's getting older, so there's various factors where I think that he could start to decline this year. But yeah, very limited in the receiving game, so he doesn't have that high of a ceiling. So yeah, RB8 seems a little too high. This is when I'm definitely attacking wide receiver, or if like a Mark Andrews is around, as opposed to investing in Nick Chubb, because I rather get Kareem Hunt way later, who offers a higher ceiling than Nick Chubb even. So even though I love Nick Chubb, I think he's one of the best pure runners in the league. I think RB8 is way too high for me right now.
Yeah, I got him at 4.8, but he's my RB12, so I'm pretty much in line with you.
Yeah.
You said 13. I think this is wide receiver territory.
Yep.
For me, nothing against Chubb. And I also should mention, looks like Deshaun Watson's going to miss at least those first 6 games of the year. Mm-hmm. They have a very easy schedule. So you could draft him and sell high, and he might his ceiling might be higher than RB7 for those first 6 weeks with Jacoby Brissett, because they're probably just going to run the shit out of the ball.
Yeah, they face, you mentioned the schedule. The first 4 games are against the Panthers, Jets, Steelers, and Falcons. So yeah, they can be a run heavy team and probably start 4-0. Yeah. Love the idea of again, I rather draft a receiver in this range, but if you do end up with Nick Chubb, I would consider trading him away after that amazing stretch, because his value will probably peak at that time. But I think this Kareem Hunt situation, we'll see what happens, but I think that his ADP is going up because of that. But again, there's just not much more room to go up at RB8.
Yeah, I mean, after those 4 games, I mean, before you trade him away, check to see if the Chargers' run defense is still broken.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's probably another easy match.
They got a lot of talent on that team, but they have that kind of philosophy that tends to give up the run even when they do have decent players. So something to keep in mind if Chubb finds is in your plans, or you're higher on him than we are. RB9 is Deandre Swift, and now running back starting to get a little dicey. I love Swift, I mean, as a player, but he's kind of like, I mean, his usage profile actually is not very different from Eckler. So that's interesting. Like, if you can kind of figure out a way to get a receiver up high and then somehow get Swift, in the middle of the second, he doesn't always fall that far, but that's an interesting strategy. I mean, he averaged 11.6 carries per game last year. He was on the field for about 2/3 of the passing down snaps, which is really high for a running back. So I'm projecting him for similar usage this year, about 11.5 carries per game, about 60% of the passing down snaps, but got one of the NFL's best offensive lines this year. I mean, I really don't see a weakness on that offensive line. So if there's anybody that could, do it with a little bit, less, volume than you'd expect, I think DeAndre Swift is actually in a good spot this year. I know we were fading him on Prize Picks a ton last year, but
well, because he was hurt, but
yeah. But I feel like his rushing prop was always too high, and then he had like a couple of big games and everything was under 50 yards, but yeah, I don't know. I feel solid about Swift this year, but I'm not really excited to draft a running back in this spot. What about you?
Yeah, no, I like the Austin Eckler comp. I think that's very fair because obviously he has massive receiving upside, and they like using him around the goal line. So that's all we really care about when it comes to running back. He hasn't really been able to stay healthy for a full season. So I think he has top 5 upside if he can stay healthy. And again, like he's healthy going into the season. So I have no reason to believe he won't stay healthy. And we were only attacking his props because he was playing through injury last year. But I love him in this range. I think that he does offer upside at least in this range. And we're kind of high on this Lions offense as a whole.
Yes.
If they have guys going downfield like DJ Chark or Jameson Williams, like that might actually open up things for Swift, for Goff to just dump it off to him and there's less defenders around. Like I think Swift is pretty he's game script independent, or whatever I'm trying to say, dependent. He can thrive in either game script. He had that one game where he had 33 rush attempts for 130 yards, or he can rack up 10 plus catches. So I just love his profile where he doesn't really have any flaws in his game other than he's not getting those carries on their own 30. He's kind of like Austin Eckler, who you can get like sometimes in the second round. So I do love where he's going.
Yeah, and I love, for a back like this, because I think that was the same thing, people, and I thought it was so silly. People used to say, like, can Eckler handle a workload? And like, I was like, this dude is like one of the strongest dudes in the league, like if you didn't know. But I look at that game, the infamous tie game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which was just a crazy game. Swift carried the ball 33 times in that game for 130 yards.
He has that upside for sure. He can handle it.
Yeah. So, I don't mind him there, especially like I said, if you're up early in the draft and maybe you want to go all in on Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson, and then you're probably not going to get Swift coming around the other side, but maybe if you're a little more toward the middle, you can make it work with the receiver and then Swift in the, early to mid second. I think, it really starts to get even dicier after Swift. I mean, RB10, you got Aaron Jones, and, I love Aaron Jones. I feel like people wrote him off like 2 years too soon. AJ Dillon was drafted and everyone thinks Aaron Jones is on the outs, but it's still, you have to think about range of outcomes, right? Like there's still a scenario where you draft Aaron Jones at RB10 and he doesn't lead this team in touches. Like that, like that's not out of the question. I'm saying I still think he's the favorite for touches because I expect him to really ramp it up in the pass game with Green Bay losing Davante Adams. But I do think it's kind of dicey. And I'm looking at our projections, and you and I both have AJ Dillon projected for a handful of more carries than Aaron Jones. So that never makes you feel good this high at running back.
Yeah, like I could certainly make a case he should be the 10th running back off the board, but this is where running backs seem kind of fragile, where there is some downside to taking this early. Again, this is when you're still able to take one of those elite wide receivers. And then I kind of like taking AJ Dillon a lot later, just kind of buying in on that anti-fragility with AJ Dillon. But Aaron Jones, whenever Davante Adams has been out of the lineup, he's been insane, right? Like I think he put up top 5 numbers with Javonte out of lineup. Granted, I don't think AJ Dillon was on the team for like half those games, but he's obviously going to be more involved in the passing game. But this offense itself is probably going to be more run heavy without Javonte all season. So, and they're still probably going to be a 10+ win team, Super Bowl contender. So I think they're going to be a run heavy offense. And similar to you, I have AJ Dillon getting more carries. So it's hard to get too excited about Aaron Jones at this RB10 spot. It feels closer to his ceiling to me.
I actually have him ranked RB10, but I have Dillon ranked RB20, and Dillon's going RB26. So the better value in my rankings is Dillon. So it's not anything against Jones. It's just kind of I still rather attack wide receiver or tight end at this part of the draft, just because they're, again, it's kind of like a little bit with Eckler at the top. Like the range of outcomes is a little fragile here, like as you said.
Yep.
Okay, who we got at number 11? Javonte Williams, and it's kind of the same deal. Like, talented guy, should take a step forward in terms of his usage and his split with Melvin Gordon in year 2, but Melvin Gordon's still on the team, and they've said, hey, he's still going to be involved in the offense. Maybe he doesn't get 200+ carries again, but I still think he could get double digits most weeks. And so again, just not ideal for drafting a running back this high. Like, you still kind of want those like locked in workhorses. You don't really want a committee back this high, especially when, like you said, you could get those wide receiver ones who you can't replace. Like, if Javonte Williams goes down, Melvin Gordon's in a borderline RB1 while he's out, but you're not going to be able to replace the wide receivers that you could pick in this range. So nothing against Javonte, but I just not my favorite pick here.
Yeah, he's so interesting because at RB10, RB11, it is a bit risky because Melvin Gordon's there. It was fun, the first couple months of the offseason when they didn't sign Melvin Gordon. I mean, I had Javonte Williams is a top 5 back at that point. Plus, this is going to be a Russell Wilson-led offense. There's going to be more touchdowns to go around. So I think the offense is going to be a lot better. But yeah, Melvin Gordon's still there. I think it's going to be closer to a 60-40 split this year. And Javonte was able to put up the RB17 numbers last year in a true 50-50 split. So I think that does represent closer to his floor. And then if Melvin Gordon were ever to miss time, I mean, he has top 5 upside. We saw in his one start last year without Gordon in the lineup, he posted the RB1 overall numbers that week in week 13. So we kind of got a taste of that. So he's a rare back in this range that actually has upside if his backup gets hurt. Like if you look at Alvin Kamara, doesn't really have upside if Mark Ingram gets hurt. Same thing with Fournette, Barkley, Montgomery. So these kind of guys, they're kind of already at their ceiling, whereas Javonte has more to go if Gordon were to miss time, or if just Javonte just runs away with the job this year, which is possible. So I can get behind Javonte at RB11. I just wish he was going just a little bit later.
Yeah, he's kind of a guy, like, when I'm drafting on best ball teams, like, I want exposure to him.
Yeah. But,
in a regular redraft league, I still think I feel more comfortable with the wide receivers going where he's at. Okay. The 12th and final running back in the top 12, Alvin Kamara. This is tough because, I mean, we expect him to get a 6-game suspension. We don't know when it will be. So how are you kind of factoring that into your rankings? I have him outside the top 12. So 12 is I get the appeal. It's Alvin Kamara. He's nasty. But 6 games is a lot. Yeah, so that we always say that we don't really want to take on risk this early in the draft. Mm-hmm. So why would I do that? I'm very confident in my ability to draft teams, so I can kind of make up value if I miss out on, if Alvin Kamara ends up playing all 17 games, so be it. He's not going to really be on many or any of my teams. It's just at this point, just give me a guy like Leonard Fournette who can actually provide 17 games of value if he stays healthy. So I'm not a fan of taking on any kind of risk like that early on where, yeah, he could end up missing 6 games
later in the season. So I'm usually shying away from players like that.
Yeah, I mean, got just some other names going around Alvin Kamara, CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, Mark Andrews, and you mentioned Leonard Fournette. So, it's just, when you factor in the 6 missed games, I can't find a way to get to 12.
Yeah.
I think I'm at 18. I can get there. And even then, still not a fan of really just kind of mortgaging 6 games worth of upside for the off chance that maybe the suspension it drags on and whatever. But I just think same thing with DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think people are properly accounting for the missed games, because when you plug the numbers in, that's a sizable chunk. And it's not just super easy to replace a guy like Alvin Kamara. And it kind of just throws off your whole draft if you have to now chase those 6 games.
Yeah, and with Hopkins, I agree with you, but at least we know that's the first 6 games. That's the easiest time to replace a player because you don't really have many bye weeks. Everybody's healthy. So it's very easy, or it's easier, I should say, to replace Hopkins. Whereas Kamara, his suspension could come, in the fantasy playoffs. We don't know when the hell or if it's going to come. And that's way more difficult to replace. So that's why that, potential suspension is even worse, in my opinion.
We actually have some extra time. So you know what? Let's keep going down the list. We can knock out some more of these guys. Leonard Fournette is up 13th. And I mean, I do want to ask you, he had the negative training camp, what is the weight gain is like the Eddie Lacy kind of situation. Yeah. Everyone's talking up Rachaad White, but I don't know. I feel like they like Fournette. I don't think they're just going to give a rookie back, a ton of snaps. Their offensive line is already kind of banged up. They're going to need pass protection, but I think Leonard Fournette, I'm with you. I would draft him over Alvin Kamara every time.
Absolutely. And I had a feeling this story of, he's eating too many burgers would turn into a nothing burger because he had plenty of time to take that weight off. Come on. I wouldn't be able to do that, but I knew he would. And I said, if anything, this is going to make his ADP drop and make him even more of a great target. But I mean, last year when he was healthy, we were both ranking him inside the top 5 every week, right? Like his usage was insane. So yeah, if White sprinkles in a little bit more on passing downs, so be it. I still think Lenny's going to be a low end RB1, massive touchdown upside in this offense, and Brady likes him. So I just think that, Lenny is sort of like a high floor, high ceiling target. Right before, I think that's when we really start to get some question marks. That RB 14 to 20 range. I mean, I do like that. Most years, that's what I call the frozen pond. So it's a lot better than years past, but certainly that's the range where you can start really poking holes in guys. And Leonard Fournette, I can't poke any holes in his game right now.
Yeah, you got Barkley, Elliott, Montgomery. I think there's the for Barkley and Elliott, people are just kind of down on them, but they're still kind of floating around there. I mean, but you could, when it's all said and done, I just think after you get past, I would say Mixon, maybe Chubb, and there's so many question marks about all of these guys that I'd rather, to your point, kind of wait and take a guy a little further down on that list, because, Leonard Fournette could easily, I don't want to say easily, but there's a very good possibility that a guy like Leonard Fournette could outscore a guy like Aaron Jones or a guy like DeAndre Swift or a guy like Javonte Williams. They're all kind of in this kind of tier. It's not a frozen pond, but it's a tier where I feel comfortable waiting and getting someone near the back end of it rather than reaching for a guy in that, RB 8, 9, 10 range.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you think there's where is the frozen pond this year before we get out of here? Where do you see it?
That is a loaded question. I mean, so last year, where Zeke, Akers, Montgomery, Gibson, Dillon, Etienne, Breece Hall are going, guys like Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis, Raheem Mostert were going last year. And obviously I was like, those guys are the frozen pond. I was ranking them right there. I wasn't saying their rank is, ridiculous, but it's just like they have such a low floor. All of those guys in that range that I just rattled off, like, I don't think they have that low of a floor. So I think the frozen pond would be like J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire a bit, but they're going late enough to where you're not really going to be in too much trouble if they bust. But those are the guys, that's sort of that range, that 24 to 28 range, maybe Miles Sanders. But even then, like, they're going so late now because the RB2 tier is so strong this year that I'm not really calling them frozen pond, but that's kind of the range I would consider that label. Do you think of, like, is there a group this year that you would label that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of in that same range. Edwards-Helaire, you just don't quite know. I mean, we loved him a couple years ago. It's just kind of been going downhill. You got Devin Singletary, great year, great finish to the year, but
yeah,
I'm hearing noise about Zach Moss. We know they drafted Cook.
Yeah, Cordell Patterson would be the ideal. Like, if he was RB20, I would say he's frozen pond. But the market's so sharp this year that he's, what is he, like, RB32, which seems about right. So I just don't see any, like, red flags where typically the ADP gave us some doozies. Like last year, Ronald Jones being ranked ahead of Leonard Fournette. I think I was calling that out as much as possible. I don't really see anything like that this year.
So if you missed out, let me ask you this then. If you missed out on one of those top six, and like, how comfortable would you feel? And let's say you miss out on Mixon as well. So you miss out on those top 7 backs. How comfortable would you be essentially going for? I mean, many would kind of call it a 0 RB, but you're really just kind of taking what the draft gives you. But like, how comfortable are you this year? Because to your point, running back is kind of deep, where if you can get, like, a wide receiver 1 and like 2 wide receiver 2s, like, I don't know if I'd feel that worried taking maybe 3 shots at these, those kind of lower tier running backs and just hoping 2 out of the 3 hit.
Oh, absolutely. That's when I would turn into 0 RB. That's why I don't subscribe to any of them, but I'm very comfortable in that state. And I've had a few drafts where I've done that, right? Like, I get Dylan, Kareem Hunt, and Tony Pollard as my top 3. And then I'm loading up on the, like, backup running backs, but you're just taking as many shots as possible. I would absolutely do that. There has been some times where, like, Zeke Elliott or David Montgomery fall to RB25, and I'm like, all right, this is ridiculous. I'll take him there. But I am absolutely okay just punting it through that, RB14 to RB22 range if, needed. And if, again, like, if none of these guys fall, like, way too low. But yeah, I'm very confident in my ability to just target these high upside running backs. Just looking at my running back upside chart, you can kind of copy what I'm doing, but I like to target those, like, A+ to B+ players, sort of in the middle of the later rounds.
Yeah, man, I totally agree. All right, that's gonna do it for us on this episode of the Fantasy Flex Podcast. You can find Sean on Twitter at @_oddsmaker. You can find me at Chris Raybon, and you can find us at those same handles on the free award-winning Action Network app. Make sure you stay tuned for our next episode. We'll have Jake Seeley to talk running backs and, maybe some frozen pond, maybe some not frozen pond. I don't know. It's going to be exciting because, I think there's a lot to choose from out of that, running back 12, 13 and on. So stay tuned for that. actionnetwork.com is where you can find our projections, rankings, Sean's upside running back piece and all that good stuff. So until next time, let's get this shmoney.